What is poppin' YouTube? Doing our rest of season rankings today. We're starting off with the tight ends today and looking at the tight end landscape after Mark Andrews got hurt. Man, it's just disappointing. But in our S tier, we do have Travis Kelce. You drafted Travis Kelce in the first round. He's going to continue to be the tight end one rest of season. Then when we move on to our A tier, we have Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson, Dalton Kincaid, and then shout out to Trey McBride for coming up and making it into our A tier. Now, I do prefer Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson in this tier. I mean, Dalton Kincaid's been playing very well, tied to Josh Allen. Trey McBride had his second year breakout the last 2 or 3 weeks. But really, these are the tight ends where you feel pretty good and comfortable with these tight ends. I couldn't push George Kittle, who's also going to be in my B tier, up into this tier. But really, however you flavor this, I think Sam Laporta definitely leads off this tier in the A tier. Then the other guys, it's kind of just your mix and flavor on a week-by-week basis. Then we move on to our B tier, and we got George Kittle, Evan Ingram, Jake Ferguson, Michael Mayer, David Njoku, and then Kyle Pitts. A lot of upside here in our B tier. I think for me, you're hoping that you have one of these guys on your team to throw in your tight end spot each and every week. Otherwise, we're going to be moving on to our C tier, where you have Luke Musgrave, Logan Thomas, Pat Frymuth, Cade Otton, and then Dalton Schultz. This is more of the where am I at? Not feeling great. You're kind of just streaming tight end at this point. I do like Luke Musgrave and his overall upside rest of the season, but this is where I end with my C tier. Then we move to our D tier, and we got Gerald Everett, Darren Waller if he ever comes back off of IR, Hunter Henry, Dawson Knox, Cole Kmet, Chig Okonkwo. Could even maybe add Taysom Hill into this mix where you're just streaming these guys. You're playing it based on matchup. You're hoping that it works out for you on a game-by-game basis, but that is where I end for my tight ends. Moving on to our running backs. In our S tier, we have Christian McCaffrey. There's no reason for us to have Christian McCaffrey. He's still the RB1. You still have him. If you have him, absolutely elite level upside rest of the season. You're happy. Hopefully you're in playoff contention. Absolutely amazing. Best fantasy football player right now. Then we move on to our A tier, and we got Austin Eckler, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, Devon, Alvin Kamara, and Jonathan Taylor. There has been a few adjustments here in our A tier. The main thing that I want to bring to attention is, of course, Devon getting healthy gets pushed back into the A tier. Jonathan Taylor moves down. Alvin Kamara moves up. And really, it's your flavor between Travis Etienne and Breece Hall. I like Travis Etienne as much as the Jaguars offense has kind of been a letdown with Trevor Lawrence this season. Still way better than what Breece Hall is dealing with here in the A tier. So I like where I have my A tier currently. Then we move on to our B tier, and we have Josh Jacobs starting it off with Rachaad White, DeAndre Swift, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and David Montgomery. I mean, you got the 2 Lions running backs. Like I said, I think Jahmyr Gibbs, if he was fully involved, he was getting 70% of the work. We would be talking about Jahmyr Gibbs in our A tier, probably pretty early in our A tier. But since we can't do that with the committee that Jahmyr Gibbs is in with David Montgomery, we've got both these guys here in the tier. Saquon Barkley has been absolutely all volume. Where's that touchdown upside? Where's that receiving upside with Tommy DeVito? He's a solid option. I just don't have him at maybe the peak ceiling that you were hoping for when you drafted him. Josh Jacobs, Rachaad White have been slowly creeping up. They get pretty early. They're getting earlier each and every week in our rest of season rankings. So we like that. And then DeAndre Swift, as much as we've loved to see him overtake, you drafted him in the 6th or 7th round. He's been super productive for you as an RB1. We haven't seen that elite level ceiling that we've seen pretty much since week 2. So we're hoping that DeAndre Swift can kind of recapture that in the coming weeks. That's who I have in my B tier. Moving on to our C tier, we have Tony Pollard, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Raheem Mostert, Aaron Jones, and James Conner. Now, starting off the tier with Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has had absolutely crazy, unfortunate luck at the goal line. When we look at this last week, when Tony Pollard and the Cowboys absolutely crushed. I mean, think Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, both were in the top 6 fantasy football scorers for last week, but yet Tony Pollard was nowhere in sight because Tony Pollard did not get any goal line touches. All of the receiving touchdowns, they put up over 45 points. That's insane to me that Tony Pollard wasn't able to get the production. But if you look here on Player Profiler, there's a lot of exciting metrics that still say that Tony Pollard's getting involved. He's not being overtaken by any backup running back. So we still got to put Tony Pollard here in the C tier. We're just hoping that volume eventually plays out. Then we move on to Bijan Robinson, who Bijan Robinson finally this last week, Arthur Smith finally gave Bijan Robinson a ton of work. And what did Bijan Robinson do? Puts up over 20 fantasy points. Now it would be so easy for me to say, boom, Bijan's back, baby, and go put him in our A tier. It's just not something that I am willing to do and or can't tell you to do in good conscience. So I will be having Bijan Robinson here in my C tier. Then we have Derrick Henry, Raheem Mostert. Derrick Henry with Will Levis continues to be a volume play. He's got a really great playoff schedule coming up, so I like Derrick Henry here. Raheem Mostert, of course, now goes back from maybe in the B tier to the C tier here this week for us because Raheem Mostert is now splitting the backfield again. We got Aaron Jones. We're hoping things continue to accelerate for Aaron Jones rest of season. James Conner had a great first game back, getting the rust off, but we know the absolute volume hog that James Conner can be, and Kyler Murray looked good, so I like James Conner here in our C tier. Moving on to our D tier, and there's some still very good guys here in our D tier. We're starting it off with Kenneth Walker. Maybe Kenneth Walker should be pushed up. I don't love Kenneth Walker's playoff schedule, so we're putting him here in our D tier. He is a very solid running back, so if you have Kenneth Walker, I'm not panicking. I just love some of these other guys a little bit more than Kenneth Walker. We then move to Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams will be coming off of IR, not this week, but next week, which is good for any of you guys that were holding on to Kyren Williams. Now, is this offense still going to be the same? When is Matthew Stafford going to be back? What is Carson Wentz going to look like in this offense? All things to consider for my man Kyron Williams. But that's why I have him here in our D tier. We still love the elite level bell cow upside that he has. Moving on to our next guy, we have Gus Edwards. Now, maybe Gus Edwards should be higher because Gus Edwards has been an absolute touchdown hogging machine. A few things are making me a little bit more hesitant about Gus Edwards. We're just holding him back maybe a little bit just because of Keaton Mitchell, but I still want to see this offense continue to take those steps. Gus Edwards looking like Jamal Williams this season with the type of touchdown upside that he has on a week-to-week basis. I want to continue to see those carries between the 20s go up, see his efficiency stay where it's at, and maybe next week we put Gus Edwards in our C tier. Next player in our D tier is going to be Joe Mixon. And yes, I hear you. Joe Mixon had himself a great night. Joe Burrow being out for the foreseeable future. I just don't see how the Cincinnati Bengals offense gets anything going. Joe Mixon hasn't been anything pretty much other than like volume machine. And so I just have him here. I mean, he's going to get the volume. This offense is going to be bad. But how many touchdowns, how many receptions is he actually going to be able to get in this offense with Browning as the backup quarterback? Not too many in my personal opinion. So I have him here. Moving on to our next guy is going to be Brian Robinson. And Brian Robinson and Javonte Williams, this was a really clear debate for me where I was trying to debate which one do I put first. And really, I went with Brian Robinson. He's just scored more touchdowns this season. Now, Javonte's absolutely been cooking. This Denver Broncos offense has started to cook again with Russ Wilson at the helm. I still prefer Brian Robinson over Javonte. And if you hate me for that, no worries. I totally get you. Then we move on to our wide receivers, and we got our elite level wide receiver ones. We got Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs. That is a major change from where we had last week. Moving on to our solid wide receiver ones. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keenan Allen, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase without Joe Burrow falls to us as a solid wide receiver one. And that even doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel great having him here, but you have to have him here because of the talent. Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Brandon Ayuk, and then Jalen Waddle. And the thing that I will mention about these rankings is Justin Jefferson, we still have no timetable on his return. He should be probably returning next week. If Justin Jefferson comes out first week with Josh Dobbs, I mean, he could definitely move into our elite wide receiver one category rest of season. But right now, I'm still having him here because he hasn't had the same type of production as all the other guys in front of him. So, but we're excited for Justin Jefferson rest of season. We then move to Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Have both of these guys tied together because, like I said, we want to see Matthew Stafford back in this offense. What is Carson Wentz going to do? Who is Carson Wentz eating breakfast with? Hard to say between Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, but I have super tight rest of season. Then Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle. I'm still high, honestly, on Jalen Waddle. I think a lot of people, he's been a disappointment this year. But when we're looking at the schedule, when we're looking at his target share, everything still seems to point up for Jalen Waddle. So I have him here in a solid wide receiver one tier. Moving on to our high end twos, we have it starting off with Chris Olave. And maybe if Chris Olave has another day, we should debate moving Chris Olave ahead of Jalen Waddle. I think that could be a discussion, but it's just so close. Ended up having Chris Olave here as the start of our high end wide receiver twos. Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson. I still have Deontay Johnson here. Even after a bad last week, I still like the target share. He's still getting the targets. We like Deontay Johnson here in our high end wide receiver twos. Then we move into our just normal wide receiver twos, and we have Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Hollywood Brown, and DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf actually went from a wide receiver 3 up to a wide receiver 2 for us. Bump also up Zay Flowers as well. After that last night performance on Thursday night, Zay Flowers is cooking, and especially without Mark Andrews, he is the clear one in the Baltimore Ravens passing attack. So we do like Zay Flowers there. A lot of good options here. A lot of people were harping on me on my video earlier this week about Nico Collins. Why do I have Nico Collins above Michael Pittman rest of the season? I've had it like that for a while. I like Nico Collins coming back into this Houston Texans offensive fold to see where things go. But then we move on to our wide receiver threes, and it's Tank Dell starting off this tier. Maybe Tank Dell should have made it into a wide receiver 2, especially after the last few weeks. I think that's definitely something that you could have argued. Then we got Deebo Samuel, George Pickens, Kobe Myers, Amari Cooper, Josh Downs, Chris Godwin. And yes, maybe I should have pushed Amari Cooper down with them having the backup quarterbacks now playing without Deshaun Watson. I just think the volume that Amari Cooper's still going to get is going to be significant enough for him to be a wide receiver 3. Now, if you have amazing wide receivers, are you starting Amari Cooper each and every game? Probably not, but I do have him here. Then we move to Josh Downs, Chris Godwin. Josh Downs, we want to see him continue to get healthy off of that knee injury. And then Chris Godwin, he's had a down last few weeks, but I do think Chris Godwin is one of these guys where over the next 2 weeks, he could end up being a high-end wide receiver 3, even get into that low wide receiver 2 range for us. And then moving on into our flex considerations, we've got T. Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins, Rashee Rice, Terry McLaurin, Drake London, JSN, Gabe Davis, and Tyler Lockett. A lot of great options here. I still think Tyler Lockett can maybe make a step up. Maybe we need to consider him a little bit higher, but this Seattle Seahawks, it's hard between JSN, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf to know who's going to perform on a week in and week out basis, but definitely love some Tyler Lockett. And rounding us out in our rest of season rankings is going to be our quarterback rankings. And in our elite tier, we had some changes. We had Josh Allen as our QB1 pretty much the last 2 weeks, but Jalen Hurts has finally overtaken Josh Allen just based on the changes in the offense, the interceptions. And to be fair, the interceptions haven't all been Josh Allen's fault, but we still have Jalen Hurts as the QB1 rest of the season, then Josh Allen, then Patrick Mahomes. And I think Patrick Mahomes honestly could overtake Josh Allen if things continue the way that they are in Buffalo. Then we move on to our every week QB1s, and we got Lamar Jackson, we got Tua, we got Justin Herbert, we got CJ Stroud, and we got Dak Prescott. If you have any of these 8 guys that we just talked about, I feel pretty good heading going into the rest of the season. Even if you have an every week QB1, hopefully you're able to address things in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round that you otherwise were not able to do if maybe you had to take a Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd or 3rd. I still like CJ Stroud. Hopefully you were able to pick him off waivers. Hopefully that bolstered your team. Dak Prescott's absolutely a big cookie. And I think there's an argument to be made, Dak Prescott versus CJ Stroud, but I still do have CJ Stroud ahead of Dak Prescott. Then we move on to our lower end QB1s, and we have Kyler Murray, we got Trevor Lawrence, we got Jared Goff, and we got Brock Purdy. Yes, I think Kyler Murray, he was a streamer for us last week, but after what we saw last week, he seems healthy enough with that ACL, scrambling ability-wise, for him to end up being a lower end QB1 for us. Trevor Lawrence has been struggling, and maybe Jared Goff should go ahead of Trevor Lawrence. I just like the offense of the Jacksonville Jaguars just slightly a little bit better than what Jared Goff is running. The upside, because Trevor Lawrence does have a little bit of rushing ability, but maybe when we're looking at next week, Jared Goff can overtake Trevor Lawrence, and Brock Purdy ending off with that San Francisco 49ers offense. Then we talk about some streamers. We got Justin Fields, Sam Howell, Will Levis. Sam Howell's been absolutely balling. I just don't trust this offense rest of season, but maybe I should, and maybe I am underestimating Sam Howell. I like Sam Howell here, Justin Fields, and Will Levis as streamers. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Now a mustache video tomorrow, so make sure to tune into that. We're going to be going live Saturday night as well as probably tonight, so make sure you tune into that, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.